There's something terribly wrong with the thinking of Sam Harris. He was already criticized heavily for a comment he made not too long ago as of the posting of this video relating to the Hunter Biden situation, where he said the following.
I mean, Hunter Biden, at that point, Hunter Biden literally could have had the corpses of children in his basement. I would not have cared.
And of course, this assertion of consequentialism and moral inconsistency shocked many people, including myself, who have been following Sam Harris for a long time. But he has recently been back in the news because he said something even more jarring and even more concerning, which has earned him the label of an authoritarian and a bunch of other epithets that are quite colorful. I will allow you to see the full comment that he made here on a recent podcast, Impact Theory, and then I'll come in and I'll analyze it and explain just how wrong and how terrible this is. Go.
But dial up the deadliness of the pathogen. Give us something like, airborne Ebola that incubates for a month. You don't know you have it, and you walk around spreading it, and it's got, a 75% fatality rate, and it's mostly killing kids. No one gets to make that choice anymore. I mean, then literally the cops come in and vaccinate you. And I would say that all of us would agree to that. The moment, again, that you turn up the lethality on the pathogen, you turn up the effectiveness of the vaccine, you turn down the risk of the vaccine. Give me a truly safe vaccine where there's not even one documented case of vaccine injury, right? So then you just have to be completely crazy to be worried about being vaccinated in that kind of environment. Then it's just a no-brainer. Then we just don't tolerate a diversity of opinion because the stakes are too high. It's a full-on emergency. Bodies of kids are being stacked up in parks, right? There's so many of them, we don't know what to do with them. We've got these mobile morgues, and we have a vaccine that actually works. And then we've got RFK Jr. saying, maybe you don't want, maybe you don't want to get the jab on Rogan's podcast, right? That's the world I've been worried about ever since COVID.
Wow. Where do we even start? Let's start with the first obvious problem. The obvious problem is that Sam Harris's argument is rife with logical inconsistencies, and in fact, not only that, but it's very sneaky and it's quite manipulative. In one sense, Harris describes this very weird scenario, this unrealistic scenario, we'll call it for the purposes of this video, where the lethality rate for this virus, Ebola, is 75%, and the vaccine is completely safe, there's no side effects, and there's no downside for taking it, and yet the cops, the government, still has to force you to take the vaccine. Now, in that scenario, if what he is saying is true, there would be no need to force someone by his moral calculation, which I think is wrong, I'll get to that in a second, but by his own moral premise to take the vaccine because the lethality rate would just kill them and take them out in the first place. So why in the world would you force them? Then in this other scenario, he talks about how the vaccine would supposedly, everyone would agree that we should take the vaccine in light of these very odd circumstances. And of course, there would be no downsides to it and things of that sort. And he kind of talks about how the skepticism around the vaccine would also be bad in light of these circumstances. So he weaves in and out between two different scenarios. One unrealistic, the one about the lethality rate, and the one about the completely no side effect vaccine. Not a single vaccine in history has been without some kind of side effect. Even the most time-tested, even the most empirically verifiable ones, not a single one in history. Between one that's a little bit more realistic and actually has legitimate concerns about the medicine. And he tries to conflate both of them. This is Mott and Bailey. So the Mott is like the easy position to defend, and the Bailey is the harder one. And so someone will say one of these positions and then go back and forth between them whenever they get attacked for criticism and then claim victim and claim their argument is being misunderstood. This is sly, this is sneaky, and Sam Harris, one of the geniuses who led the New Atheist movement, which I personally, as a Christian, 100% disagree with, but stood beside Christopher Hitchens, one of the greatest orators of our recent history, and led that movement throughout universities and institutions in America, has devolved to saying this kind of stuff. Sam Harris, the man who spoke against the ills of radical Islam and the illiberalism that society is dominated by radical Islamic theocracy, face has devolved to this level of thinking. Now, that's just the first problem with Harris's entire argument here. There's a deeper problem that I want to address. Harris's claim here is not just one of pragmatism or one of being realistic. It's actually a fundamentally moral claim. And from a moral standpoint, as someone who's interested in moral philosophy myself, I think that this claim is just as frivolous as it would be from any other angle. Yes, it's unrealistic. But let's discuss the philosophical angle of this claim. Sam Harris omits a few important moral facts that go into decision-making and go into human responsibility. And that is, very simply, the fact of free will. No amount of unrealistic hypotheticals can negate the fact of free will. In fact, my friends, there is a connection between man's actions and also his responsibility, his duty to be personally responsible. Even if he fails to undertake that responsibility, there is never a legitimate reason to force him to be responsible. Because number one, that's not true responsibility rising up from a sense of duty within his soul. That is rather compliance with some external authority that does nothing to change his character. Responsibility and behavior are character-related actions. External forces making you be a good person, making you be virtuous, has nothing to do with character. It immediately goes into the realm of survival. If the government tries to make you a good person, you don't become a good person, you become an actor. Let me say that again. Some of people watching me believe that we have fallen so far in society that we need to have the government regulating virtue, and we need to have the government pushing certain ideas upon people because apparently the woke have gone so far, and therefore we need to adopt the woke's tactics. Hear me very closely. When the government tries to force you to be a good person, you don't become a good person, you become an actor. Get that in your head, let it go through your veins, because that's what's happening. And that's what people like Sam Harris, these tyrannical, totalitarian minds that have gained popularity, that have managed to tickle the ears of the populace with their nonsense, have been able to push into people's minds. So understand that point, and I promise you, you will be better for it. Let's go on. So, you can't force someone to be a good person. You can't force someone to be responsible. You can't force someone to do it because man has to undertake responsibility with his own free will. And if your moral prescription violates the free will of man, the innate freedom of man, then it cannot be a moral prescription. It will do nothing but lead to chaos. Now, for those of you who say to me, well, Christian, all this talk of freedom is so generic and it makes no sense, and it's really just this, it goes towards this sort of selfish mindset in society. I challenge you to this. Try to justify any kind of moral behavior without also justifying the idea that human beings are responsible for their actions. If human beings are not responsible for their actions, which with the idea that goes against free will would say, then how do I hold anyone accountable? How can I expect people to be virtuous or to be good people or to care about others, as Sam Harris claims he wants people to do? How? That's a challenge that many of you will not be able to answer because it's impossible to answer, in my duly opinion. But also, Sam Harris's entire formation of his argument is very limited. Not only is it fraught with logical inconsistencies, not only is it morally frivolous, as I just established. If you deny the relationship between free will and action, you cannot even begin to make a moral argument, much less any kind of coherent claim about humans should act in the first place. But when your argument, on top of those two issues, is already so limited so as to not take into account a variety of factors, you can't even implement it in reality. Very simply, my friends, Sam Harris roots his claim that the government should be able to force people, or in this scenario would force people to do things against their will, in the lethality rate. But my friends, the lethality rate is not the only consideration that should go into a moral claim. In fact, during the COVID-19 pandemic, scores of individuals were encouraged not to take the vaccine because they had pre-existing heart conditions and other medical issues that could have potentially been inflamed by taking the vaccine. Every single vaccine, my friends, has side effects, and some side effects are worse in particular populations. Not only does Harris seek to violate the natural freedom of man, without which no moral judgment can truly be made, he also seeks to forcibly sacrifice your own self-preservation as a human being on the altar of the common good, or what is oftentimes erroneously called the greater good. Think about it. The logic that says that you have to take something that your doctor may say, or it may be true, that this may impede your health for the benefit of society, means you are a sacrificial lamb, and it also presumes that society owns you. Hello, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who made this comment. Hello, Marx, who wanted to kind of have this same idea sort of exemplified through the dialectical process of the proletariat rising above the bourgeoisie. Hello, progressives, who wanted to have this idea overtake the legal systems of America and distort our moral thinking from the individual to collective. Hello, every tyrannical mind, every low-quality idea, every anti-human idea that has ever existed in the canon of Western history. All of it is embodied in this presumption that Harris's argument makes. But guess what? Society does not own you. You are not a serf to the collective. You own yourself. And no one can take that away from you. You own yourself. Self-ownership is the fountain of every other right that you as a human being, you as a moral agent, possess within your being. My friends, ideas like this have consequences. The idea that you must deny yourself and put yourself on an altar to be sacrificed towards external forces, to make other people feel good, in the name of benevolence, has distorted and twisted the thinking of so many people in Western civilization towards servility and not righteous iconoclasm, towards slavery and not dangerous freedom, towards peaceful slavery and not dangerous freedom, towards wanting to have a form of soft slavery interpreted within their own worldview that they think is righteous and good, as opposed to having a proper view of human nature and the requirements for human flourishing, which of which freedom, which of which free will, which of which a respect for the individual, which of which understanding human nature are all requirements. My friends, Sam Harris should compel all of us to look within ourselves and ask ourselves a simple question. Where have we gotten to in our society where we are at the point that comments like this reflect what has actually happened in history? Look at the COVID-19 lockdowns. Look at how many people complied blindly. Look at how the experts had a hold over the reasons and mind of people and drove them into so many terrible situations. For some people, drove them into death. Hello, Andrew Cuomo. Look at how society has been transformed. How have we gotten to a point in our society where these ideas have been able to take root in policy and have been able to even infect those on the right or those who are of an anti-authoritarian disposition, who are so tired of seeing what the woke left does to us every day? How have we become the enemy, some of us? Or how have we become so servile? How have we been so passive to let this happen? My friends, we need intellectual fruit. Fruit nourishes you. It fuels the body. It fuels the spirit. We need intellectual fruit. We need a revolution of the mind that will push the Western civilization, especially America, towards a more pensive attitude, towards a more philosophical attitude, towards a more first principles based attitude. We need to have a revolution of the mind that will allow us to restore the richness of the founding generation, the richness of the foundational ideas of Western civilization. We need a revolution of the mind that will make all of us into logically based intellectual juggernauts in our own right, in our own respect. And that will be a bulwark against the tyrants who would seek to manipulate you in the name of benevolence and the common good. We need a revolution of the mind, and I intend to do my part and lead it. Join the revolution of the mind. Join me. Like this video, comment on this video, share this video, subscribe to this channel. Also, join my locals, christianwatson.locals.com. Donate to me on my locals, on my PayPal, on my Patreon. All of that will be in the comment section down below. Join my Discord. Be a part of this growing community of thinkers and doers who will restore the spirit of the American Revolution and also restore the intellectual rigor that used to be so endemic to American society that has been lost. Join this revolution, my friends. You will not regret it. I love you all so much, and please stay pensive. Bye, guys.